Why isn't it? Okay. Well, welcome everybody to another interview with Guildmaster Gaming. Today we're talking with Joe Gietl. He's now, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were the director on the Fledgling?
Yes, writer and director and
Writer and
producer.
director.
Yeah, just
So
sort of.
many hats. So, and as you can see, we're having some struggles with our connection because we're
Yes,
talking
many.
across the country. We blocked
Yeah,
up.
bear with. We're doing the best we can.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. So we're talking across the country, and that might be part of it too. Who knows? So I met Joe at the Film Quest Film Festival this year, where he was selected with the Fledgling. And so, Joe, why don't you tell us real briefly what is the Fledgling if somebody hasn't heard about it, and if they want to see if it's something they're interested in?
Sure. Thanks, Dan. The Fledgling is what you saw at Film Quest is a short film proof of concept for a television series. I spent about 2 years, perhaps foolishly, writing the entire series. So I wrote 8 episodes, each one about an hour in length, so kind of that prestige HBO Netflix television type of thing. Uh, Beginning of COVID, and then so roughly 2 years to write the entire series, and then I ended up connecting with a producer, a friend of mine named Chris Gaunt, and we got together, put our heads together, and tried to figure out what would be the best way to pitch this. So I essentially took a scene from the pilot episode and repurposed it as a short film to help us as we're going in our pitch sessions. And my goal with that was satisfying as its own contained piece, as tease the show in a way that makes viewers want to know what happens next.
Okay. So yeah, as people can probably see, and I don't know how this will work out. Yeah, there is some stuttering in the feed that we're getting here. So I'm just going to kind of go over real quick. It's a proof of concept for an HBO style series of 8 episodes and dealing with a young vampire child. So that's what we got going there. So have you, yes, I will commit. I
I
really,
almost wait for it to unfreeze for a second, because it gives you 30 seconds each time.
oh, this is going to be a struggle. I can tell. We got a bad lead. Um, So I'm not sure how well we can still keep trying. I can try to piece some of this together, get some help with it. Um, so I'm going to leave it up to you. Do you want to try to continue on, or we want to see if we can maybe do something different? Or do you want to just talk and I'll just talk and write it up that way and see what we can come up with if we do get some good video in there.
It's really up to your discretion. The worst case scenario, we could also reschedule, and I can go to like a library or something where I know I'm not going to have problems. Usually there's like random time, like once a month, it just feels like my feed is like way worse than normal, and I don't know what to attribute it to. But I certainly wouldn't want to subject your viewers to a frustrating introduction of the Fledgling. So it's really up to, we could try a FaceTime, we could try obviously a phone call I'm sure would work. But other than that, we can press forward. I'm game for whatever. I'm easy. I just want to make it whatever is good for you.
Let's try pressing forward because right now, from what I'm seeing, the feed is a lot smoother. It all of a sudden kind of like
Okay.
smooths out. So maybe we got something settled in over through the lines. So why don't you go ahead and give me the pitch of the Fledgling again, what that's about, and we'll kind of go with that. So tell me, what is your pitch of what is the Fledgling for a new viewer?
The Fledgling is about a 12-year-old girl who, after being turned into a vampire, actually an orphan girl, 12-year-old orphan girl, after being turned into a vampire, sets out on a cross-country road trip, accompanied by two 300-year-old vampires, one of which has recently turned her into a vampire, to find her father in California. So the journey starts in Missouri and spans all the way to California. and together they travel the roads of a kind of dying, decaying America, all the while being pursued by a private investigator who has been hired, or blackmailed rather, by a shadowy organization. It's kind of growing closer in the rearview mirror, so to speak.
Okay. So I got to ask, because I'm a horror writer by trade. Where did you come up with the idea? What was the spark that brought the fledgling to life for you?
Are you sure you want to know that?
Oh yeah,
Uh,
I mean, I've written stories about people that get eaten alive in the street, so I'm game.
yeah, it's very kind of unusual origin story for how this came to be. So bear with me. I told this story at Film Quest, and I was like, "Oh shit!" Should I? When I started telling it, I was like, "I don't know if I should have gone into this," but I did tell him to bear with me.
Hmm.
Um, you know, you know how sometimes like a really big idea can come from something super small or innocuous, and you're like, "How did this get to there?" Anyway, um, I woke up one morning in January of 2020, and I went to get a glass of water. I was parched, and I realized when I turned the faucet on, like as soon as I turned the faucet on, I had to urinate like really bad, but I didn't feel that before I turned the faucet on. So I like rushed to the bathroom and I pee, and then and it sounds fake, but I swear to God, like this image just popped in. It's because my weird brain works like this. An image popped into my head of like that old prank that you'd hear about of like people putting somebody's hand in a glass of water to make them wet the bed. And this image of this kid in an orphanage who was being pranked and kind of bullied came into my mind. But when the lights would come on and they were all laughing, making whatever, and the lights would come on and the headmaster would be like, what the hell is going on here, yada yada, it would be blood in the bed because she was a vampire, and then everybody would freak out. And that didn't even make it into the show. The scene is not there, but it sparked this idea that ended up being, going on 3 years of my life now, living in this world, for better or worse. Mostly for better, but yeah, no, it's crazy how something so silly can lead to something really beautiful. But yeah, the original idea did come from me having to take a piss.
And I had to ask that because I was the one you told that story to at Film Quest. So I just thought it was a
I
great,
was, or you were?
yeah. So I just think it's a great thing for people that are creative types to understand that sometimes these links we get to these great ideas are just totally bonkers at first. So I thank you for sharing that. So
Yeah.
there's another thing that you mentioned that I
I,
think is really kind of neat about your show.
I just wanna, yeah, I just
Okay.
wanted to add one thought onto that.
Sure.
Just popped into my head. I think a lot of times people are like, well, I'm not creative, or I don't think like that. How does your brain work? When you have these big ideas or stories, I think it's more just like people that are creatively driven or maybe open to the moments that happen in life like that, or they observe, but like they happen to everybody. And it's just being about observant of things that happen that could spark a story or an idea or whatever, a song or a picture. Yeah, so I think everybody has the potential to be creative, and that's all I was kind of adding to that. It's not like we're aliens or something.
Yeah. We just decide that we go after them instead of going, oh, that was cute.
Yeah, yeah, just letting it kind of float. Yeah, exactly. We fixate on them for a strange amount of time.
So there was another thing you mentioned at Film Quest that I want to ask you about that I think is a really neat thing about the fledgling. You mentioned that you have a few actors that are involved with the project that for this pilot that are really kind of people that if they're into the vampire stories might have some fun with.
Yeah.
Would you mind sharing who those people are and how they got involved?
Oh, absolutely. So Anastasia Veronica Lee plays the young child in the story, Charlie. She's absolutely incredible. She's um, on a show that's about to come out, Britt Marling show, starring Clive Owen, called A Murder at the End of the World. She's worked with Dustin Hoffman. She's worked with all these impressive people, and she's a kid. And one of the most talented people I've ever worked with, and she's 12. And she was actually just nominated for a Young Entertainer Award, and so we're very excited to have her on board. And the other big news is Juliet Landau, who is most famous for playing Drusilla on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, attached to play Bianca, and is in the short Proof of Concept as well. And that sort of came about when my producer Chris Gaunt and I, in the beginning, we were like, we really want to find a name. I know it's kind of unusual to get a name talent for a short film; it's very difficult. But we felt like we had a really strong concept, and you know, because the world is so much more expansive than just this short, that we could potentially find somebody. And so we hired a casting director, Heidi Eklund, works out of the Hudson Valley area near me. Very talented, very awesome person to work with, and we sort of I believe she has kind of access to actors access in a way that normal people don't. So we put out a casting call through our casting director, and lo and behold, Juliet's representation responded. And from there, it was just talking through the idea, seeing if we could make it work. And once I got on the phone with Juliet, or got on a Zoom like this, and we talked about the character, I knew it was a great fit, because she really understood the vampire world. I mean, she's, you know, one of the most famous vampires in modern television, and she kind of comes from vampire lore with her father, Martin Landau. Um, so it just, she had such specific ideas for the character, and it was just somebody that was wanted to be super prepared in every sense of the word. And we would, you know, ping pong ideas back and forth, and we just got more and more excited about it. And I really appreciate working with people that want to bring something to the character and embrace that collaborative process.
Yep. Sounds like I just know some real Buffy the Vampire Slayer fans that will just, that alone would be enough to make them just go, I gotta see this. So yeah, that is some great news. So kind of going along those lines, you know, talking about pulling this together, it's now you're going into the third year of your life of working on this project. Um, what would you say has been probably like one of the biggest rewards so far for you?
It's a good question. I feel like I want to break that down into like
Sure.
different types of reward. Like on a personal level, I felt like I wanted to prove something to myself by writing the entire series. Even if I do embrace the idea of getting into a writer's room with this content, uh, I'm not like, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Ignorant to the fact that this, you know, it's not like they're gonna be like, here's 8 episodes, good to go, let's make it. You know, like I embrace the idea of putting it under scrutiny and making it the absolute best show it can be. But on a personal level, writing the entire series was a huge confidence booster to me, that I can tackle something of that magnitude. And it was very different than writing a feature or short or something, because of the amount of like overview you kind of need to have as a writer when you're keeping something so large in your head, of like, okay, this is episode 2, how will this affect, if I change this, it's like a chain reaction through, you know. So it's like a giant puzzle. And so that was really, you know, gave me a great deal of satisfaction to be like, holy shit, I finished that. Even though it's never done, it's always a living document. And then, you know, obviously bringing Juliet on board was another feather in our cap of like, okay, this is somebody that with real prestige in the industry. She's read incredible scripts. She's worked with Tim Burton. She's, you know, she's told a million stories of different folks she's worked with that are just like a who's who of, you know, top name talent. And to have her validate that writing and all that work was a huge boost as well. And then, you know, working together with my team, Cameron Mitchell, who was at Film Quest with me, men who did the production design and VFX, and my cinematographer Jim Powers. Actually, John and Jim both just won New York Emmys um, was a incredibly, as well as all the rest of the crew. Linda Suarez, who played Nurse Hadley, Lakota Rubiek, super talented DP in his own right. I feel like we really assembled an all-star team of people that are both friends and colleagues in the capital region. Super talented folks to put this short together, and there was a lot of pride knowing that, like, no matter what happens with this, we've accomplished something here that I think is pretty special and that I'm quite proud of. And I'm going to work my ass off to get this series off the ground, and have been for some time now. And I really believe that persistence is the key to a lot of this stuff, on these doors unlocking. You just keep putting yourself in the right position for success. So some of it's luck, but some of it is just, keep swinging at it and keep pushing. You hear things like Queen's Gambit took, I don't even know how many years, and it's a freaking awesome show. So hopefully it doesn't take us that long, but I am quite committed to doing it. And I really think that at a certain point you need to put a stake in the ground, for a little vampire pun there, and say, this is the project, I'm doing it. Like, and I have other things that I'm passionate about, other stories I want to tell, but we worked really hard on this, and I would really like to see that work come to fruition. And our motto from the beginning is, it just kind of takes one. It takes that one person to believe in the vision that I have for this story, and assemble a great team around what we already have, and let's tell something amazing. I think we have a vampire story that isn't a paint by numbers. It isn't something that you've quite ever seen in this world before. And I knew if I was going to do a vampire story, it had to be personal. It had to be from my perspective, or else why do it? We've seen 100 different great vampire stories. So my emphasis and excitement about doing this show is that I really think I can bring something different to the table.
Okay. Now, you did mention that you kind of built a larger world behind this. Do you have maybe some ideas of chasing down some of those storylines?
Absolutely. I wrote 8 episodes, but we're 100% not limited to ending the story there. I think this has real franchise potential, and I've been kicking around ideas with my producers, Cameron, and some of my writing friends, about, like, how could this expand. And I don't want to give too much away about where I think a season 2 would go, but suffice to say, yes, I think there's extraordinary potential here to show the backstory of some of these really intriguing characters, have it expand into something where it's a little bit more contained and on the road and intimate. You're seeing the world through a young vampire's eyes as she's starting to figure out what that means to be a vampire, and the practicalities of being a vampire on the road are taken into account. But I think this story has a lot of potential, much like something like The Last of Us or Stranger Things, to expand into a larger world, where we see outside of our main trio, while still keeping them involved, and still having them at the heart of the story. I think there's a much bigger story here beyond that.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned this one, but you also said you had other stories you want to tell. Did you have other stories outside of this world that you'd like to pursue?
Yeah, very, very much so. I've been working with a friend of mine, Kyle Klieg, a very talented writer director in my area. He's actually the reason probably I became a filmmaker, because 8 years ago or 7 years ago, when I sort of had this dream and quit my job and was like, this is what I'm doing in my life type of moment. He was the only one I knew in the area who was making these crazy short horror films, and I was like, well, if he can do it, maybe I can. And I had, at that point, my film school was, I just watched a shit ton of movies. And then I realized that maybe I have a deeper love for this than just as a consumer of content. I hate that I fucking said that word. But yeah, so we've been working on a couple scripts. One's called working title is called Dead Meat. It's a feature film idea, basically about a fast food restaurant that during the apocalypse has to a group of fast food workers have to stay open and stay alive when the world goes to shit. And I like the idea of doing that because it's something we could probably do quick and relatively easy. Nothing's easy in this business, but the single location piece kind of helps. And I met a gentleman at Citrus who had we just before Film Quest, we were at Citrus with the Fledgling, and one of the best films I saw there was a single location piece, and it seems to make sense financially. But again, it's another question of like, well, I only want to do it if I can bring something fresh to the environment. And I really like the idea of doing a horror movie, a crazy horror thing, John Carpenter type of thing set inside of, like, if you took Assault on Precinct 13 in The Mist and combined it with Attack the Block or something like that. And I really like the idea of doing, a single location piece in a fast food restaurant where there's that camaraderie between people who work there, and there's a bit of commentary, but it's like, it's just there. It's not like the focus of the story. It's like you see pictures on the wall of happy employees serving happy customers, and then you look at the people that work there and they're all like fucking miserable, and the sad sacks that are eating there. And there's a lot more to it than that. And there's nothing wrong with working at a fast food restaurant. And that I worked in fast food several times. I used to work at a place called DP Dough, which was a calzone place, and we were open till 4:30 in the mornings. So I wanted to take a bit of my experience there of working at an all-night fast food joint and marry it with this fun horror idea. And several other ideas. I'm 13 years sober from drugs, so I have a feature film script that's a little bit Lynchian, I guess you'd call it, about a guy who's trying to stay sober while he waits for a bed to get into treatment, and he's sort of forced to stay at his sister's house, but meanwhile he's being like haunted by I guess you call it a handyman that he believes to be living in the basement, but he's like the only one who has encountered this man. And so it's pretty weird. But yeah, it takes a lot of my own experience with addiction. And I also worked on and the other side before I went into filmmaking. I was in kind of the drug counseling, harm reduction field. So I kind of know both angles of that. And I feel like I have a lot to say on that subject. And even in the Fledgling, a lot of that experience kind of comes out, obviously, with the, vampires' need for blood. There's I feel like it's an apropos metaphor for addiction in a lot of ways, and harm reduction being like, okay, we don't feed from on human beings, we drink from blood bags, and like trying to transcend our base impulses to exist in a better way, and pass that advice on down to the child. But it's not always as easy as that. Relapses happen, and desperate times can call for desperate measures, and recovery isn't always linear for a lot of people. So yeah, those are some. There's another one. I don't want. I could ramble on about our ideas all day.
So you've really focused in on horror. I can tell that's your genre that you really enjoy. What is it about horror that draws you?
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's okay.
I get excited. Sometimes I feel like it has a bit of a psychological thriller edge to it too, or you're not, I like the idea of like the unreliable narrator. I don't know exactly what it is about horror. I think maybe it's a reflection on my own life and the reality that I see around us. And in the case of the Fledgling, I think the vampires just happen to be a really cool vehicle to tell a really human story, and you can kind of dig in. And with horror kind of comes comedy and sadness and all these other emotions. And I've been through some crazy times in my life, and maybe I'm a pretty kind dude, but maybe it's an outlet in some way to explore the darker parts of ourselves and the shadow self and all that, Jungian psychology stuff. Yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but
no, that's
I'm
good.
open to other genres. I would really like to do a comedy, but even comedy, like if you watch something like I Think You Should Leave, or the Tim and Eric Show, there's like a hint of there's darkness there. You know what I mean? There's a strangeness to it. So yeah, I think those are the things that I gravitate most towards genre speaking, and I like working with genre because it kind of gives you a structure, and I like to bring something that's where it's a Joe project to it, but also deliver the goods, so to speak.
I think what you're saying about horror and comedy, I've worked with writers and they say, really, in delivering a good horror, a good comedy, the beats coming up to it are the same. It's how you twist it at the end to either take it dark or funny. And that's kind of the real difference between the two. So I can see where those two kind of tie together. So, with your love for horror, and you mentioned already a number of influential movies and directors and that, in growing up, what would you say is probably like the movies that influenced you the most, that really got you caught up into film?
Yeah, I'll sort of chronicle it from young Joe. The one that comes to mind, um, as a kid, like 5 years old Joe, is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. It was like the first one, the Gene Wilder one, of course. Um, and I think you could also look at that in a similar, like the structure of that, just kind of going on what you were just saying, is very similar to a horror movie. Like
Yes.
the person get knocked off like one at a time, so you're on to the last kid. And I remember the scene in the tunnel freaked me out, but I like in Slugworth, and just the magic of that film, the production design, the Allison one to go through the door and it's like way you open it into a larger world. I don't know, that movie was one that just stuck in my brain as a young kid. And I think maybe in my early teens, Terminator 2. Maybe it's that parent dynamic, because at the core of that story, aside from, and that's why Cameron is so good at what he does, is at the core of that story, it's really about a story about a kid and his robot who's like his father figure. It's like a father-son movie. And that's what makes you emotional when you're watching it at the end, is that relationship. So it's like cool as hell. The effects are amazing. It delivers on all those, on the action tenfold, and it's just a great film. But that was one that was like a remote drop anytime I saw it in my teens. And then I would say, getting a little bit older, without really knowing I wanted to be a filmmaker, I thought I was going to be a musician, and I still do that. And I still have a kind of unfinished business feeling about music. So I'm going to be putting out a record sometime in the next 6 months or so. Um, but I guess Mulholland Drive would have been the next one, I would say, in my late teens that I saw. And I think my friends were like, that was a weird movie. And I was like, yeah, a weird movie. I really fucking like that. And it was just such a singular vision. And then from there, I just started diving in, and I moved to LA for a while after I got sober. And I met a guy out there by the name of Mike Rakowski. He's been a PA on, and he's actually directed a couple of his own films, but he's been a PA on like everything from Batman to Marvel to whatever. And he used to like let me use his film collection like almost like a library. So I would just be checking out his. And so I saw There Will Be Blood when I was like 21 or whatever, and Me, You, and Everyone We Know, and just like he had just like a great, just throwing Boogie Nights, whatever, throwing out all these films that I remember renting, and just I couldn't get enough. And so when I came home from LA after that kind of fizzled out for financial reasons and family reasons, um, it just got more and more voracious. I got into the Criterion collection and the Arrow collection, and I started getting into John Cassavetes or Jacques Tati, or some great horror movies like the Nicholas Roeg stuff, like Don't Look Now, The Innocents with Deborah Kerr, and obviously all the Cronenberg stuff and body horror and Japanese cinema, and yeah, it's just it's like a rabbit hole, man.
A very broad scope in what you've got there. So it covers a lot of areas. So now with the Fledgling, are you still on the circuit run with the film festivals?
Yeah, we had a kind of emphasis on this one of like there's so many film festivals out there. We really put together a strong festival plan. I attribute that a lot to my producer, Cameron Mitchell, also the editor on the film, which I think one of the strongest points of the film is the way that it's, the stylized editing that we found. Yes, but he has had a lot of success on the festival circuit, and he kind of does that festival consultation for people who are looking for that. And he had a lot of success with his film Elsa, which just won a Telly as a PBS American Masters documentary, as well as the Co-op, which had premiered at Slam Dance, and he had been a juror for Slam Dance. So he kind of showed me the proper way to kind of go about having a festival run, which before I kind of was just like blindly submitting and waiting to hear back. We actually developed a plan of like, okay, what ones fit our project, who can we potentially reach out to, and see, with so many submissions, and so long story short, yes, we played at Citrus, we played at Film Quest, we were an invite to Syracuse, which is near me, and we were a finalist at Flickers, Rhode Island. And now we're waiting to hear back from the next sort of crop of ones that we've submitted to hopefully keep the momentum going.
Okay, so it sounds like you're just getting started basically in the festival circuit, and you've still got a few months to go. So if
Yeah,
anybody wants to pick up and catch the Fledgling, a good place for it would be to check out the local festivals that do horror and genre films. So
for the time being, till we find a home for it or the show comes to fruition, you can also visit fledglingseries.com to watch the trailer of the film, or follow us on Instagram, Fledgling Series at Fledgling Series on Instagram and Facebook. Shoot me a message if you want to connect. Open to any and all conversations. We're currently taking some meetings with showrunners. But if you'd like to be a part of the show, or or just interested in talking, I would be happy to chat and maybe send you a screener or something like that if the conversation goes well.
okay, no, that's some great stuff. It sounds like you got going on. So I don't really want to ask. Usually, a lot of times I ask people, so what's up next? But it sounds like you are so involved with this project right now. This isn't at the end of it. This is really still just at the start of everything you're doing with it.
Yeah.
So I wish you a lot of luck there. So I'm going to kind of twist it a little bit here on our conversation. We've been going for about a half hour, but you kind of came in and you're saying your friend was, a good inspiration for you and kind of helped you kind of jump into it. And because you didn't really have a film background except for watching film and loving film.
Right.
So if you had someone come up to you and say, hey, I want to become a filmmaker, what advice would you give them about becoming one?
You got to really love it, because it's going to take a long time, and I feel like I don't know how to say this in a way, but it's like, do you really love? Is that something you really want to do? Because if there's something else you could do with your life, maybe do that. Because for I think there's a lot of heartbreak, there's a lot of ups and downs, and it's going to take a lot of persistence, and you might not make a lot of money, ever, or for a while at least. But if you do love it, I think it's being disciplined to kind of be your own accountability or boss or what have you, to start writing. Depends what you want to do. If you want to act, go to auditions, put yourself out there, network with people. For me, some of the most important connections I ever made were just because when I quit my job, I threw up an ad on a random website called Thumbtack, because I didn't know anybody. I didn't know how to get a crew to make this, script I had. And I ended up getting connected to a guy who had done a documentary about the Adirondacks, the mountain range in upstate New York. And he's like, this is a little too weird for me, but I might know a guy. And so he put me on, he put me on, I think I scared him a little bit, but he put me on to a fellow named John Yost, who was a part of a company called APB Films, which also includes my cinematographer on the Fledgling, Jim Powers, as well as my production designer, VFX supervisor, John Stegman. So I ended up meeting some of my closest collaborators, and I was um, lucky to on my first project, and they kind of showed me how to make a movie, how not to play, as John would say. We're not playing movie. We're operating as if we're making something like we had $20 million, even if we have 20,000. And so it's a mindset thing. It's like you got to be persistent. You got to believe in yourself. You got to accept that it might not be great right away, and allow that to be okay in your own mind. Because my first film was, you know, I'm still proud of it, but I see all the things I did wrong, and I think maybe that's always going to be the case. But I see less of those things now, and learn the craft. Surround yourself with filmmakers. Go to networking events. Meet people. Don't be shy. I know that's hard, but it's really just immersing yourself in that. Study other things. I mean, I think Werner Herzog says if you want to be a filmmaker, study anthropology, study psychology. Don't go to film school. I'm not saying don't go to film school. I think that I know a lot of people who went to film school and did great. In my case, I took a sort of less traditional route and watch a lot of films. Watch bad films. Watch good films. Think about why you like them, why you don't, why it doesn't resonate with you. Break them down. And it kind of makes it difficult to watch films now without doing that for me. But I try to give myself permission to go and enjoy it on the first watch, and then if I really like something, but I'm trying hard not to have my phone out as I'm scribbling a note of like random scene idea that I liked. And so yeah, it's not an easy answer. It's not an easy path, but it is one that can be extremely rewarding because you're fulfilling your creative dream and doing something worthwhile. And as I think Kubrick would say, sort of, life can feel meaningless at times, but I think in a way, through the creative process, we got to create our own light, so to speak, our own meaning. And I think for me, art is that, is a big part of that. It's not everything. I used to have my entire identity wrapped up in my creative output, but I think I've grown away from that. But it is a huge part of what makes life great. And getting sober, it was a huge reason that I was, latching onto that like a lifeboat, was a big reason. So yeah, it helped me find my purpose. And if you feel like this is your purpose, pursue the hell out of it.
Okay. By the way, congratulations on the years of sobriety. I know how hard that can be and what
Thanks so
that
much.
entails. So I'm going to kind of jump gears here, Mom, because you mentioned you're planning on putting out a music album.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what style of music is it that you like to perform?
Yeah, it's a little bit different. So when I got sober, I got really into writing hip hop lyrics. And so it's more along the lines of like, I don't know what you'd classify it as in that realm, but like the Roots, Mac Miller type of thing, jazz rap, Tribe Called Quest. Um, Again, it's a very different creative outlet, but it satisfies something else that where filmmaking is such a long game and takes so much patience. I like the immediate gratification, so to speak, of writing a song, recording. I got like my own little setup, recording a song and being like, boom, there it is. It exists now. It's more immediate. And so yeah, we're gonna be shooting a really weird music video soon. I think it's something that I've been working towards for a long time. And at one point, I think I kind of moved away from it. But I think with having a few films under my belt now, it's sort of freed up, where once it was very blocked. Um, the creative energy needed to do the record the way I wanted to do it. And always room to grow and improve. But there's some kind of singer songwriter stuff on there too. It's not like straight up just hip hop, but yeah, I mean that was a big influence on me when I was getting sober, and it was a huge outlet, before filmmaking. So I kind of felt like it's something that at some point I put all this time into. I paid I could stack notebooks to the ceiling of shit that I had written, um, but had little to show for it. So I kind of feel like I want to come back to it, and where it's more like it's just fun for me now, and perform live, do stuff like that, and see where it goes. No grand expectations, but I am pretty proud of the record that we've assembled, and I'm in the mixing mastering phase of it right now, just adding some bells and whistles and fun instrumentation onto what already exists.
Sounds like a lot of fun. And like you said, you're making a video, and a lot of festivals now take music videos. So we can
Yeah,
look
I
for maybe
had
seeing that out there.
did you meet Jeff Hilliard at Film Quest?
Yeah.
The guy who ended up yeah, he's a real cool dude, and I loved his music videos, and a lot of my friends make music videos, and maybe coming back into the music world now, with this film experience, it kind of gives me a bit of a leg up to do some really clever visual stuff with the music, knowing everybody in the scene now. So I'm excited about the idea of marrying those two worlds that have been so important to me throughout my life.
Sounds great. So I'm kind of ran out of questions, but is there anything else you'd like to share before we kind of wrap all this up?
No, I'm just I want people listening to know that we want them to come along on this journey with us. We're guys that decided to make a TV show. We have some TV experience, much more film experience, but this is very much like something that we decided, like, we're gonna do this, no matter what it takes. And so we didn't come from that television background or anything like that. And I just want people to feel a part of that journey and follow along. And if you're interested in chatting, like I said, please reach out. It's been quite a journey to get here, but this is the tip of the iceberg, and I can't wait for everybody to see the potential for this show. And thank you so much for having me on, man. This was really fun.
Okay. So one last time, will you tell us where we can find the information about, you were saying you have on Instagram and some other social media stuff. What are those sites once again, if people want to look those up?
Sure. It's at Fledgling Series on Instagram and Facebook, and Fledgling is spelled FLEDGLING, because I'm sure you're going to link that, but it's kind of a tricky word to spell. So Fledgling Series on Instagram and Facebook, and the fledglingseries.com if you want to check out the trailer and website. Real quick, just gonna make sure I didn't put a "the" in the and just give you the wrong website right now. That would piss me off later if I had done that.
Yeah, you mentioned it was fledglingseries.com.
Yep, it's just fledglingseries.com.
Okay. So it's all at Fledgling Series or fledglingseries.com. And you can find more coming up, hopefully, on some major cable network or streaming service that, because I'll admit, I really enjoyed the show. I like the look of it and the feel of it and kind of where it goes. I like vampires that have a difference to them, as long as they're not too sparkly, as one might say. So,
Yeah, agreed on that for sure. I think I'm glad we're moving away from that.
but yeah, so just as to everybody else out there, so look for Joe Gietl at the film festivals and at the sites that he said. I'll be writing up a review of the Fledgling, of the episode that I saw, not the full episode. I guess you could say it's just the proof of concept and what it's about, how I felt about it. And I'll be linking this and that together between the two different sites, between YouTube and my blog. So people can go back and forth through there. And thank you, Joe, for joining me. And good luck with this project. I hope to see it. I really do. I hope to see it because I really enjoyed that concept, the way it came up. I'll even give a little bit of a spoiler. The scene with the mirror, I thought was great.
Oh,
And
thank you
I
so
was sitting by some people that were, oh, I didn't see that. I thought that makes it work when it actually played off the way it should. So
that was the most difficult scene to do by far. So thank you for mentioning that one. I don't want to give too much away. I want people to see that and
Yeah,
be in the moment of what happened. But yeah, I would love to keep you updated as we progress in the series. So any news that
sure.
comes, hey, I would, I would love to come back on. I don't know if that is if something happens, we'll talk. Hopefully, talk again.
Yep, hopefully. Okay,
Yeah,
I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording here. I'll just leave it with one last thing for everybody that's out there watching. If you like what we're doing, please like this, share it, subscribe, because I will be quite honest, trying to get into the field of working with film people, subscriptions matter. I do have people that, because of their publicists and that, say, oh, I can't do anything until we reach a certain level. So thank you for all your support. Thank you, Joe, and I hope to hear more from you soon.
thank you so much, Daniel. Really appreciate coming on, and thank you to our Zoom call for holding up for us.
Yep. Okay.
Have a great night.
You too.